Paulo Shakarian, CEO and co-founder of Cybercon. Thank you for tuning in today. So we're going to talk about a very interesting topic, and that is if you're a cybersecurity professional and you're dealing with a company that has a machine learning solution, what are you getting into if you agree for them to do a proof of concept or a demonstration? I've heard a lot of stories about folks who engaged with a machine learning company that found that when I did the proof of concept, that I had to invest a lot of engineering effort. I had to do a lot of tuning. I had to work with their customer support people for long hours to make sure that the thing worked and produced results. But that's not always going to be the case. And it really hinges on what the machine learning company is actually analyzing. Because in some cases, that a company that's doing machine learning for cybersecurity can actually do a proof of concept that could require little or no effort to show value. So why is there such a big dichotomy? Well, it really depends on who owns the data. So if you look at one type of machine learning company where they are using machine learning techniques to analyze your data, so they are going to somehow plug into your SIM and do analytics on the data in, let's say, your SIM, think of all the things they have to consider. They have to consider how your SIM is set up. They have to understand how you define which alerts are important today. They have to take a look at your history of alerts and which ones that were valid and which ones that were not. Based on that, they got to get access to that data, understand your data schemas and how you've labeled things, and then write maybe little Python scripts and stuff like that to connect their solution to your data and do so in a way that's useful to your people. Now, none of that is particularly difficult, in assuming that the company has competent sales engineers walking you through the process. It's certainly doable. And in many cases, I think it'll be worthwhile. I think machine learning has a lot of promise in things like SOC operations, and you should take advantage of that. But you need to know what you're getting into. And that is going to take a lot of time from your people. So you need to prioritize it appropriately. And if you're going to commit to a POC with a company that requires that kind of lift, you should allocate the right resources. Otherwise, it probably isn't worth doing. Now, let's look at the second type of company, a company that owns their own data. Now, this might not be applicable for things like triaging alerts and SOC operations as much as for other things like maybe identifying malicious binaries, or in our case at Cybercon, predicting which CVEs will be exploited by hackers. Now, in this case, if the company owns the data, you're not going to have any of those issues of examining, what your data schemas look like, understanding how you've classified things as malicious, because none of that is done by you. That's all done by the company because they've done it ahead of time on their own data. So the result is that deployment times would be much faster with a firm like that. And it wouldn't be comparable to, say, a machine learning company that's doing analytics on your events that the SOC analysts go over. So looking at things like software vulnerabilities, binaries on the endpoints, maybe tools used by malware reverse engineering, et cetera. Those all tend to be solutions where the vendor owns the data. So what's nice about that is you should be able to get results from that vendor fairly quick and be able to understand their value rapidly. The other nice thing about working with a company that owns their own data, there might be other things about their data that your team may find useful beyond the machine learning predictions. And I know us as a company, we run into this all the time, where there's little bits of metadata about the intelligence we collect that feeds our algorithms that customers come back and say, hey, this extra thing, that was also really useful. And I know that's true for other vendors as well. Anyway, just wanted to give you some food for thought on, when dealing with a machine learning vendor and making decisions on if you're going to launch a POC. Again, in general, if the vendor owns the data, know that that POC is going to be involved. It has a good chance of being high value if they're doing their stuff right, but it will require some work on your end. And likewise, if a machine learning vendor owns their own data and is not relying on you, don't assume it's going to be a heavy lift. You can actually push that vendor to get you results very rapidly to understand what they're all about. And chances are they'll be able to support that. So hope you learned something today, and thank you for tuning in. Bye now.